Assalamu alaikum, I'm your host Matt Patel. Welcome to the debate. 250 years ago, 13 British colonies declared independence from Great Britain. On the 4th of July 1776, a bold idea was adopted. According to the Declaration of Independence, the United States was founded on the ideals that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, the United States stands as the most powerful nation in the world, but its rise to power has also been marred by bloodshed and terror inflicted on those less powerful. Indeed, it was shaped by the dispossession of Native Americans, by territorial expansion, by slavery, and in a post-9/11 era, by the war on terror, which has impacted millions of people, including in Iraq and Afghanistan. More recently, we've seen this with the assault on Iran and the support of the genocide in Palestine. So tonight, as the 250th anniversary approaches, we ask whether the founding ideals of America were successful. Joining us to discuss this, we have El Haj Maori Salah Khan, a human rights activist who serves as the Director of Operations for the Afia Foundation. We also have Jihad Abdulmumit, a community activist and author who was a former Black Panther political prisoner and was active in the protests against the Vietnam War. We also have Dr. Matt Meyer, an author and historian. So my thanks to all three of you for joining us. Actually, let's start with Dr. Matt Meyer. You are an author and historian. Tell us about the ideals that America was set up with, just to give us some historical context.
So I want to say three main things briefly about the origins of the U.S. on this 250th anniversary. First, I want to give a nod to a fellow historian, Gerald Horne, whose key book, The Counter-Revolution of 1776, The Counter-Revolution of 1776, Slave Resistance and the Origins of the USA, speak more truth than the average person, even in the U.S., knows about 250 years ago. The origins of the U.S. have, this is the second thing, they have a sort of glorious PR about it being a truly revolution of the people, by the people, and for the people. That was never fully true for all the people living on the land. It was true for a group of mainly slave owners, white, male property owners. And the fact of the matter is, it was revolutionary in terms of being anti-monarchy, no kings, anti-monarchy. And we see in some ways that there are some attempts to return monarchistic or authoritarian rule to the U.S., which has given rise to a no kings movement. We, in this grouping, celebrating 250 years of resistance to genocide, say no kings, no colonies, no genocide. And we combine all those three things together for the third main thing I want to say by way of introduction.
Sure.
You know, we're part of a grouping of people who are saying that the U.S. has been guilty of genocide against Black, brown, and indigenous peoples in particular, and that history, in this brand new book I'm putting up there by Africa World Press, was affirmed at a tribunal in 2021 that many of us helped put together. An international panel of independent jurists, human rights activists around the world, looked at 5 counts of human rights abuses against Black, brown, and indigenous people in the U.S. for these low 250 plus years, and found the U.S. guilty of genocide. So we will celebrate this weekend, but we're celebrating years, decades, centuries of resistance to colonialism, to monarchy, and to genocide, not just 250 years of pomp and circumstance at what those guys did in Philadelphia.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate you giving us such an informative history, and also to highlight where you stand on this. Let me turn to Jihad. Jihad, you're a community activist and an author. I noted that we've only just gone past Juneteenth, which is a holiday celebrated in America to commemorate the end of slavery. So from that perspective, in terms of what America has done in its past about slavery, black rights, equal rights, How does the community feel, the black community feel about celebrating 250 years, which is quite a landmark, if you will?
Right. Okay. Thank you. So, thank you, my dear brother and listening audience. Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, most gracious, most merciful, and peace and blessings be upon the Prophet Muhammad, his family and companions, all of them together. I think that question, if you ask the 13 to 14% of African Americans in the United States, you probably get such a variety of answers because people have been interpreting that in many, many different ways. And the challenge that we have today is to begin to see how we are not really benefiting psychologically in a healthy humanitarian type of way from that. The reason why it's confusing, sisters and brothers, one reason, there are many, is that on the back of centuries of slavery and exploitation of human labor, and after World War II in particular, the U.S. aggression, the Monroe Doctrine, from sea to shining sea, the aggression, the destabilization of countries around the world, the exploitation, the gutting out of the Sahel and the global South and Latin America. We here in the United States actually benefit from this in a very demonic type of way, unfortunately. The crumbs off the table of capitalism that black people, indigenous people, brown people, and poor working class white people get in this country is bigger than the fantastic dinner somebody in the global South would get. And so there we are actually beguiled into thinking that we're not as oppressed, but we are oppressed. Our minds are oppressed. And we are responsible if we don't act for the continuation of the exploitation and the pillage of the rest of the world by the United States government. So yes, June 17th, Juneteenth Day is a very interesting day. It's celebrated just like July 4th for many different reasons by many different people. Some are beguiled to think that they're really celebrating, their independence. They believe that, apolitical as that may be. And then there's a growing number of us that realize that the hypocrisy wrapped up in disguised in democracy is really not applicable. And the president now has really made it clear for those that have eyes to see and ears to hear, what Matt was just mentioning, about, it was the good framing. This is a master document, the United States Constitution. It just wasn't designed for black people. It wasn't designed for Native Americans, indigenous people. It wasn't designed for brown people. And it wasn't even designed for women, including white women. So we had to fight for all of those. And now that we're enraptured in this system, if we don't find ways to really begin to change the trajectory, we'll be complicit in the continued exploitation and oppression of the rest of the world, including ourselves and our minds.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate you giving us your views, your initial thoughts. Al-Haj Mari Salakan. Mr. Salakan, you're a human rights activist. It seems like it's not something that's going to be celebrated by most of the black community, or am I wrong? I mean, some, as Jihad very eloquently pointed out, there are crumbs on the table where some of those that are privileged, even amongst the black and minority ethnic communities, they will be celebrating and saying, we're proud to be American and we celebrate 250 years. What's your view?
If I were to guesstimate, my guess would be that the 4th of July will be celebrated by the overwhelming majority of African-American people in much the same way as it is celebrated by others. But there is a sizable percentage, of the African-American community that are at a higher conscious level, whose approach to the 4th of July celebration will be very different. It would be more critical. It will be more enlightened by an awareness of the struggle that this country has gone through over many generations and the inequality that still exists as a result, despite these struggles. One of the most prominent founding fathers of this country, this experiment in democracy called the United States of America, is Thomas Jefferson. If you ever visit Washington, D.C., the nation's capital,
Yeah.
and you do as many others do from around the world, you visit the various monuments. At the Jefferson Memorial, inscribed into the wall, is a very powerful and profound quote. I tremble for my country when I reflect God is just. His justice cannot sleep forever. This was one of the founding fathers reflecting awareness of the contradictions that existed then that are still with us today. And on a final note, there is in more recent times, there is a former U.S. senator who held up until the time that he retired from Congress the powerful Foreign Relations Committee chairmanship longer than any other senator in U.S. congressional history. His name is J. William Fulbright. He wrote a book entitled The Arrogance of Power, in which he describes two Americas. Those two Americas, that dichotomy is still with us to this very day.
Yes, quite powerful that. Quite very, very powerful indeed. Matt Meyer, both of our other contributors have spoken about the, how people feel. I think it is true to say that there will be many that will be celebrating this particular milestone, I suppose. But no nation's ever perfect. If you look at the history of nations, it's never been perfect. It's always been a conglomeration of different views, of different competing views, in fact. The ideals that Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and all the founding fathers, when they drew up that document, wasn't the reality on the ground at that particular point. It was to get to a better union, a more perfect union. Obviously, with Trump in power, it seems to be getting away from a more perfect union, but still, America has been a leader in many fields, whether it's science, technology, and even in human rights, despite everything else that is done, where today it sees itself as an empire as opposed to a nation amongst equals, I suppose. How does that clash between the ideals? How is it today? Are those who want to take America into more of an imperial power in the ascendancy, or is it not, or is it finely balanced? What's your view on that?
I think the points you're making are really important because as my dear brothers Jihad and Al-Hajj Mauri both suggested, we've never been, and we're not now, maybe less than ever before, a single America. We've always been two Americas, many Americas, competing in terms of what it was and what it would be. And of course, yes, you're right, no nation is perfect, but I also think we need to be careful to see this all as a Trump thing. It's not just a Trump thing. Trump, in many ways, is a symptom of the imperial move that's been going on really since the beginning. And yes, I said myself, there was this No Kings, this anti-monarchy piece that had some revolutionary flavor to it 250 years ago. But it was so quickly moved towards a piece that relied on slavery, an issue that some talked about resolving and ending in 1776. But no, the move towards slavery was too significant. No one really even talked about the question of indigenous peoples and the theft of land that was going on. And my brother Jihad talked about women, even white women. So the imperfections, the imperial fault lines were there even from the beginning. And I think, we want to say this weekend, we will celebrate too. We're going to celebrate also. We do not believe in just having a protest. And we very specifically are constructing some of the work that's going on in our circles this weekend, not as a protest, but as a celebration. But it's going to be a celebration of people like Jihad and the Black Panthers, people like Al-Hajj Mauri and the Black Muslim population in the U.S. that's thinking more critically, people like the women suffragists, black
Sure.
and white. And I'll say one more thing if I've got a second. People like John Brown. And John Brown, along with Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman, now not 250 years ago, but 150 years ago, in slave times, they began writing their own Declaration of Independence, their own new constitution, which in those days said, aha, this place is imperfect. If we're going to really become an America with any of the ideals of we the people, of the people, by the people, for the people, we have to rewrite this whole thing because the foundations are weak.
Jihad, in your time as an activist for the Black Panthers, you were fighting for civil rights. Now, do you believe that fight for civil rights is still ongoing, or has it concluded? Because we've had a black president, Barack Obama, as imperfect as he is seen these days. I see Al-Haj Maori smiling, but he was black. You have black senators, you have black people who are very prominent in the media. And when I say black, I mean political black, those who are not white, you know, from brown backgrounds or from Asian backgrounds. And the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, he comes from an Indian background. I understand the politics will be fiercely debated, and I'm certainly not promoting Kash Patel's political views. But America, you know, I take Matt Meyer's point. We can't see this thing in a Trump-centric thing lens. What's your view on what I've just said, Jihad? You know,
Yeah, very good question, and it's a complex question, but I'll dive in at this point here. There was an actor, Matt Meyer, known. His name was Ozzie Davis. He made a statement. He said, "It's not the man, it's the plan."
yes.
It's not about Trump as such, even though he's like, you know, the extreme of a historically systemic system. And so we can focus on Donald Trump. This is not a matter of a few bad apples. If we get rid of them, if we change them, everything would change. Or you can't put it on the shoulders of one or two. This is, as Matt said, a historically systemic design, intentionally designed, continually to be intentionally designed, you know, to exploit and oppress the majority of people in the world.
Yes.
It is as simple as that. And if you don't knock, if somebody doesn't see it under individuals Donald Trump, then you're really deceiving yourself. You know, the condescending position that's always been held, but now that it's espoused out of the mouth of a U.S. president with no shame added to it.
But
you can see clearly.
But let me interject there, Jihad. So then my question, when I say to you, has the civil rights movement succeeded? Have we come towards the end point? Or is it still an ongoing struggle? Where do you see where the movement is?
Right. Well, if you can't beat them, join them. That was the strategy imposed on the civil rights movement. So it was actually co-opted. You know, if you can't beat them, join them. So here we have sisters and brothers sacrificing their lives, you know, to fight for equality in this system. You know, and the system, after a while, begin to recognize that, well, let's give them some of what they asked for, and the majority of that, no. And so now we think the gains that we made, we were homogenized into a system of oppression, given a couple of crumbs off the table, and I use the word crumbs. Al-Haj Shabazz, one of our historical famous black leaders, used the word crumbs to show that this pacification, you know, this illusion that's being cast, the fact that hardworking Americans' tax money are going to finance the genocide of people around the world, while we enjoy our flat screen TV sets and this is not Islam anyway. This is so counter to Islam and any human rights perspective in the life of everybody on this planet. So to become the civil rights movement went to have equality, but it fell short. The equality into a system that in itself was oppressive and demonic.
Okay.
So it was short-sighted, and just including, it was short-sighted in that way. And we respect, and I definitely respect all the sacrifices of our sisters, brothers, civil rights movement. But what the United States government and system did, it just embraced them and neutralized them,
Neutralize
gave
them.
them a little bit of the crumbs
Okay.
off the table, and now you got what you asked for.
Al-Hajj Mauri, you were smiling when I mentioned Barack Obama. Has he been a
Yes.
disappointment, and have those black political leaders who, took advantage of the work that people like Jihad did, like Malcolm X did, he mentioned his Muslim name there, like others did, Martin Luther King and those stalwarts, have you felt that the community or, the ideal of a perfect America has been let down because of poor leadership amongst these types of people? Hakeem Jeffries today, for example, is somebody that comes to mind. I think we're having problems. Al-Hajj, we're having problems with your connection. Do you want to try once more before I move on to Matt?
Is it better now?
It's a little bit better, yes.
Okay. The reason why I smiled when you mentioned Obama is because, Obama has been used so many times as the barometer for black progress in America. Let me say that as an American progress. Let me say, in my humble opinion, Barack Obama was one of the better presidents. No question about it.
Sure.
He was one of the better presidents. But he was one of the better presidents within a system mired in corruption and compromise. He was not as strong a leader as he could have been, that I wish he would have been, even though he was one of the better presidents, no question about it. But it's the system. It is the system that is morally, ethically compromised and that violates what this country is supposed to theoretically stand for, a land of liberty and justice for all. It has never been this. There has been an ebb and flow within U.S. history. That ebb and flow has come as a result of struggle.
Yeah.
Has been as a result of struggle. One of the most important and impactful struggles has been the African American struggle for human rights, not civil rights. Human rights. Strong civil rights.
Okay.
And
Mauri, Mr. Salakhan, I'm going to have to pause you there because the connection is really weak. Matt Meyer, we're going to go to a break now, but I just wanted to quickly ask you, just to move this on a bit further, and we'll continue after the break as well. In light of where we are now, and looking at the historical context, 250 years of this nation, starting from nowhere and from British colonialism, I suppose, and becoming what many see as an imperial empire. What's the future direction of America? Do you think America itself, certainly in terms of what happened internationally with the Iran war, which has decimated its power globally, I mean, a mistake which nobody could have predicted would happen. Do you think now Americans start fixing the issues that it faces as a nation, the 50 states that make up the Union, or 50 plus states?
Wow, that is a tough question right before a commercial break. Let me see if I can do this. I'm going to give this thing that's a look back to look forward, and then maybe after the break we can go to the forward thing. The key assistant of Martin Luther King, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Vincent Harding, raised this question that many of our current colleagues raised today. First of all, he said, yes, never called civil rights movement. It was a black-led freedom movement. That's what was happening in the 60s. And he said, is America possible? And we say that again now from an international, imperial, and peacemaking perspective, from a domestic human rights making perspective. It's like Langston Hughes, another, not militant, but sort of celebrated Black American poet, said, let America be America again. America never was America to me. So we're really talking about the concepts of what can be. based on what really was the true history, not civil rights, human rights, not justice for all, but
Okay,
justice for
Matt,
some.
I'm gonna
And
pause.
we'll get back to this after the commercial.
I'm going to pause you there. Thank you. I think that was a really good segue. Folks, we're going to have to pause and go to a break. But listen, don't go anywhere. Three amazing guests from America joining us to talk about 250 years of the United States of America. See you straight after this.